Of course, fear is subjective. What you might find scary, others might not, and that's okay. I honestly think it's really interesting to have unique fears. Whether that be from trauma, the unknown, or something completely unexplained, everyone has their own reason. Someone with arachnophobia would probably think all spider Pokemon are the scariest thing ever, or someone with submechanophobia, which is the fear of submerged human-made objects, probably finds Delmise to be absolutely terrifying. So I think it'd be interesting if you commented some Pokemon that you're personally scared of, as well as the reason why. So I thought since it's October and Halloween is soon, it would be fun to discuss what the scariest Pokemon of every type is. We're also going to be diving into their Pokedex entries a bit just for some context, since most Pokemon aren't really made for the sole purpose of being scary, and it can also make seemingly innocent looking Pokemon absolute demons. So let's get started, shall we? Normal types. Surprisingly, I had a decent amount of contenders for the scariest normal type Pokemon. Most normal types are pretty adorable looking, or just overall friendly. My initial choice was Blood Moon Ursaluna, but I feel like since Ursaluna had to be in its Blood Moon form to be scary, it wouldn't really be fair to select it since it's only really scary half the time. I find Porygon Z to be a bit scary just because it's a corrupted version of Porygon 2. Something went catastrophically wrong with it, and now it's stuck like this forever. But ultimately, if you know me, you know exactly who I chose. Hisuian Zoroark is absolutely terrifying. While Unova Zoroark looks pretty smug, the Hisuian variant looks like it's out for blood. Gaze into its eyes. It's sure to show no remorse. Its white rugged fur spiraling out of control tipped in blood red adds such a sinister aura to it. The Pokedex even describes it as looking like the embodiment of death, and it's known as the Baneful Fox Pokemon, only adding to its destructive nature. Needless to say, it's pretty clear who the winner is. Fire types. I had two choices when it came to fire types, one of them being obvious, and the other I completely forgot about. Houndoom was a pretty solid choice for me because of the idea of hellhounds. It even has hell in its name in Japanese, and it overall looks pretty demonic with the horns, its tail, and the skeleton motif. On top of that, some of its Pokedex entries are kind of alarming. Getting burned by one will result in the burning sensation never going away. The flames of hell will burn you for all eternity, or until you die. Basically an eternity. People also imagine its owls being called... Its howls. I made a fucking typo. People also imagined its howls being the call of the Grim Reaper. Whether that be folklore or truth, it's pretty cool nonetheless. But if not Houndoom, my unexpected alternate choice would be Blasphalon. Coulrophobia, the fear of clowns, is an extremely common phobia, and Blasphalon pretty clearly resembles a clown. It doesn't help that it's an inanimate humanoid creature, which could creep a lot of people out. I think the fact that it doesn't have a face only adds to the eeriness of it. Humans are drawn to faces because they show expression, but when that's taken away, all that's left is the fear of the unknown. What is this thing thinking? What is it capable of? Is it friendly? Who's to say before it's too late? It's said to cause explosions, and in that moment where the target is panicking, it steals a bit of their vitality. The fact that it can just take off its own head is pretty scary on its own, but I think the cherry on top is that this thing doesn't even originate from the Pokemon world. It's an Ultra Beast. So if you were to encounter this thing, nobody would have any idea what it is, what it wants, and they'd probably think you're lying. Oh, what's that? A space clown came down and took off its head in front of you? Fucking liar. You'd be called crazy! And Ultra Beasts are known to cause havoc in the Pokemon world. This thing could be the Pennywise of the Pokemon world if it really wanted to. They're both clowns that came from space and feed off of others' vitality. I personally don't have a fear of clowns, or at least normal ones anyway. So if you are, let me know what you think of Blasphalon. Water types. Despite water being the most abundant type, I wasn't really able to find a lot of scary ones, which is pretty crazy considering some of the scariest creatures in real life are deep sea ocean dwellers. Seriously, just look at this thing. That's not normal. This isn't normal. One of the creepiest ones has got to be the jellyfish. You probably don't think they're creepy thanks to SpongeBob, but without that, these are immortal beings with transparent bodies, way too many arms that can shock you, and have no face. And clearly, I'm not the only one who thinks so, because Frillish exists. These things are water ghost types, and apparently they like to wrap their arms around people, paralyze them with poison, and drag them 5 miles below the surface of the water. I already don't know how to swim. They're just doing too much. That's overkill. Just take me to the deep end of the pool and I'm dead. Now, if you think that they're cute, that's exactly what they want you to think. It's all a facade. Now these things only get scarier as they evolve. No, the Pringles guy! No! Oh, they're gonna shrink the cans even more. Almost every single Jellicent Pokedex entry talks about it hoping to drag its prey deep underwater. So this isn't just a byproduct of something it doesn't have any control over. It's actively choosing to do this. Why? It also reads that the fate of the ships and crews that wander into Jellicent's habitats are all sunken, all lost, all vanished. Essentially the Bermuda Triangle of the Pokemon world. Their favorite food is life energy. Here's another Dex entry. Fishermen are terrified of gelatin. It's rumored to drag them into the sea and steal their lives away. It just keeps getting worse. The crown on its head gets bigger and bigger as it absorbs more and more of the life force of other creatures. These things only seek to cause harm. What is their problem? I suppose Sharpedo could also be scary. Apparently its fangs can tear through iron. It swims at 75 miles per hour. For all the people who use kilometers, miles per hour is basically 1 mile per hour. You're welcome. And it's also known as the bully of the sea. So yeah, not exactly something you'd want to brush up against you while you're swimming. Also, it's a pedo, like a torpedo, not a Minecraft YouTuber. Much like the normal type, grass types are relatively cute and peaceful. But of course, in every dozen, there's a bad egg. Probably, I don't know. I used to think Shiinotic was pretty adorable. Notice I said used to. Somebody pointed out its cold, unfeeling smile to me, and I've never been the same since. It's said that during the nighttime, in the forest where Shiinotic lives, it produces lights that confuse people. Those same people can never find their way back home again. Shiinotic is also capable of inducing sleep, and once its prey is knocked out, it feeds on their energy. Now, this is already pretty scary behavior on its own, but its smile is what adds to it. Something about it is so sinister, as if to say, it's okay, it will all be over soon. This thing away from me. Of course, if I don't mention Gourgeist, I'll never hear the end of it, so here. It is the pumpkin Pokemon after all, and pumpkins are synonymous with Halloween. And hey, just because it doesn't look particularly scary, doesn't mean that it isn't scary. It's known to roam town streets on nights with a full moon, singing eerily, and it's said that anyone who hears this song is cursed. This sort of reminds me of La Llorona, but instead of weeping, it's singing. It also likes to wrap up its prey with its hairs, and enjoys watching them suffer. So, pretty sadistic stuff. Gourgeist will also knock on people's doors during the new moon, and whoever answers is swept off into the afterlife, aka just straight up killed. These things also come in 3 different sizes: small size, average size, large size, and super size. That's way more than 3. 5, guys. 5 guys? I think that the average one's plenty though. Anyways, the taller ones disguise themselves as adults, taking the hands of children and leading them into the afterlife. Again, aka killing them. Oh, but good news guys, apparently the supersized ones don't discriminate. It says here that they aren't picky, and they'll forcibly take just about anyone into the afterlife, aka killing them. Imagine being that one guy that the supersized Gourgeist didn't take though. That must be worse than death. Electric types. Now, this is probably an unexpected choice, but I think Rotom is one of the scariest Pokemon on this entire list. Rotom might be small and kind of cute, but it's able to manipulate electronic devices however it sees fit and can even inhabit them. And it has no reason to. It genuinely just has fun doing it. Apparently, Heat Rotom likes turning up the heat and will gleefully burn your favorite outfit. For what? For nothing. That's what. All for nothing. In an age where everything is practically digital, this thing could cause so much havoc. If Rotom wanted to, it could probably go into an ATM and empty everyone's bank account. Social security numbers all leaked because Rotom was bored one day. What's that? You got doxxed? Shouldn't have said Rotom's your least favorite Pokemon. This thing has no bounds. It could go into your phone, change your password, and lock you out of it. Wanted to go home and play Sparking Zero? Too bad. Servers are down thanks to Rotom. I could go on and on about the horrors this thing could cause. It could replicate those shitty.exe creepypastas if it wanted to too, and show hyper-realistic blood, whatever that means. A phobia-based choice would have to be Galvantula. Yeah, well, it's not as huge as I thought it was. I thought it was like 5 feet tall for some reason, or 2.5 meters. But as it turns out, it's only 2'7", or 0.8 meters. Still, that's absolutely massive for a spider. It's one of the fuzzy ones too. Good luck dealing with that if you have arachnophobia. I personally don't have arachnophobia. I'm just not a fan of giant unknown species of spiders invading my home. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention? This thing is an electric type. That means it has electrically charged webs, like Miles Morales. Psychic types. The psychic type has a bunch of creepy Pokemon, the most infamous of those being Hypno. Even without any context, this thing already has an unsettling aura, especially with that pendulum that it has. This thing is said to hypnotize children and take them away. I don't think I have to explain why that's creepy. At least I hope I don't. Of course, there's that whole Hypno's Lullaby creepypasta, but that's not canon, so doesn't really count. Still, doesn't make it any less eerie. But despite all that, I don't think it's the scariest psychic type. I think that title belongs to none other than Necrozma. Despite its appearance, it is in fact a psychic type, and this thing just radiates malice. Taking a look at its design, this is one of the most intimidating Pokemon designs ever. Just imagine you're in the dark. You suddenly see a pair of glowing red eyes, and a silhouette of something beyond your comprehension. It sucks away all the light around you, covering you in a veil of darkness, unable to see just what demon you've come across. across. I went to go see just what its Pokedex entries would say, and apparently its Dawnwing form is said to grasp foes in its giant claws and rips them apart with brute force. Oh my god. Ice type. This was a clear winner for me. I had to choose Frostlass. While yes, looking extremely elegant, she has a sinister side to her. Her body isn't even her true form. It's apparently nothing but a hollow shell. Who knows what lies underneath its exoskeleton. She's also known to freeze humans and Pokemon that she likes. She then takes them to her den and puts them on display as decorations, forever rotting and surrounded by other corpses who have succumbed to the same fate. Her favorite food is the frozen souls of men, and she likes to freeze male hikers that she thinks are handsome. Imagine seeing a silhouette during a snowstorm in the mountains. You feel a rush of relief thinking that you're saved, but as you approach closer, the blood from your face quickly drains. As you're met face to face with a Frostlass, you begin to realize that the end of your journey is here. You're soon to become nothing more than a frozen taxidermy. Also, look at this TCG art of Frostlass. This thing is terrifying. There aren't really a lot of fighting types that are scary. The only thing really scary about them is their raw strength. Primeape's strength was already pretty scary on its own. I mean, this thing's just known for being angry and punching everything all the time. And then it got so angry it died. Now even the ghosts aren't safe anymore. If something was so angry that it just straight up died, you better believe I'm staying away from it. We don't have a lot of Pokedex entries for Annihilate since, you know, it's still kind of new. But the one thing that we do know is that if it punches you, it will shatter you to your very core. At this point, this is just a Mortal Kombat fatality. I was gonna choose Marshadow because I thought it was up to no good, but as it turns out, this thing isn't really sinister at all. Kind of a coward, actually. Sorry for doubting you, little guy. There's a lot of people who are afraid of bugs. They're creepy, crawly, and just overall pests. I usually just kill them. But the few times where I hesitate is when the world decides to drop the bug DLC on me, and I see something I've never seen before. I don't know what this thing's capable of. Maybe it flies, maybe it bites, who's to say? The only good bug is a dead bug. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Shedinja is nothing but an empty shell. But what's mostly creepy about it is that it shouldn't exist. No, it's not an accident, child. This thing just straight up shouldn't exist. It's an anomaly. Even the Pokedex goes out of its way to point that out. Whenever an animal sheds, this shell doesn't become sentient. So is this just a lost soul looking for something to inhabit? And were they so desperate that they would even inhabit an empty shell? It doesn't use its wings. It's hollow and it doesn't breathe. And I wouldn't see why it would be able to. It's a shell after all. So seriously, what could have been so desperate to possess an empty shell and why? Apparently anyone who gazes at the opening on the back of its shell gets their spirit stolen. So whatever is inhabiting this thing, it doesn't want you to know the truth. But there is one bug type that's arguably more disturbing, Paris. Paris has these mushrooms growing on its back, but once it evolves into Parasect, it's no longer in control of its own body. The parasitic mushrooms have completely taken over. What the hell was I gonna, it just says and it's apparently. Well, it's apparently what? What the hell was I gonna say? Whatever. Okay. Its eyes, once filled with hope and peace, are completely whited out. It likes to stay in dark, damp places. But what's creepy is that the Pokedex goes out of its way to tell us it's not the preference of the bug, but of the big mushrooms on its back. When there's nothing left to extract from the bug, the mushroom leaves spores on the bug's eggs. I would make a The Last of Us reference, but I've never played it, so I don't know what I'd say. I don't know, something game of the year or whatever. Its Ultra Sun entry even points out that the bug is mostly dead. So this really is a zombie Pokemon. The mushroom most likely gives the host just enough nutrients to keep it alive and do its bidding. Also, apparently the poisonous spores it produces are sometimes used in medicine in China. No, I didn't make that up. That's just straight up what the Dex entry says in Stadium and in Fire Red. I guess China's real in the Pokemon world. Who would have thought? A China-based region would be pretty cool though. What better flying type Pokemon to pick than the Destruction Pokemon Yveltal? I swear to God, if I see any comment saying Yveltal, I'm gonna shoot myself. If I looked up into the sky and saw this thing, I know the end times are near. And I think that's what makes it so terrifying. This thing is an omen of the end. It absorbs all of the life force from everything, and when it eventually dies, everything else does too. And it turns back into a cocoon, likely to start the cycle all over again. It's said to wake up every 1,000 years, so the chances of you coming across it are pretty slim, but I would hate to be unlucky enough to cross paths with this thing. Xerneas is thankfully able to restore everything, but still. However, if that's not scary enough, I got a pair of balloons. No, this script wasn't written by a dart monkey. Drifloon and Driflim, while looking seemingly innocent, are creepy. Now, if you don't know, Drifloon tugs on the hands of children, hoping to steal them away. But here's the part you never hear. Drifloon is the one getting pulled around instead. Pretty funny. However, I guess they found a solution, because another entry reads that some kids do end up missing for mistaking this thing as a balloon. Sun's entry just straight up says that it drags kids into the afterlife, and it also just mentions it hates fat kids. I don't know why, it's just funny. It had no reason to mention that part. Poor kids out there there catching strays from a balloon, no less. Here's something I've never heard of until now. If this thing pops, its soul spills out with a screaming sound. That alone sounds scary. And it only gets scarier if there's more than one soul in there, because this balloon expands with each soul it takes from someone. And we're still talking about the little guy. So what the hell does Drifloon have in store for us? Well, not much, I guess. The only thing I could find was that this thing is strong enough to carry people in Pokemon, and you either wind up in the afterlife or somewhere random, because this thing can only drift through the wind. It can't actually move on its own. Maybe it drops people from way up high in the sky, and they just die from the impact. Awfully grim, but that's the only way I can see both of these dex entries being true. Poison types. For some reason, I had a lot of trouble picking a poison type. I have yet to finish playing through Scarlet and Violet's DLC. I know I'm very, very behind. I really need to get to it. So, I don't know much about Petrarunt. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. However, it does look kind of scary. It's half ghost after all. And apparently it feeds people toxic mochi and takes control over them. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to get taken over by a purple peach thing anytime soon. It's the subjugation Pokemon, which means oppression or conquest. Maybe this is like the Pokemon equivalent of a zombie apocalypse, just with mochi. Toxic mochi, but mochi nonetheless. Rock types. Who thought a rock could be scary? Not me, that's for sure. Boo, limestone! Oh no! Anyways, real talk. Lycanroc's midnight form is pretty ferocious looking. It's pretty much the werewolf Pokemon, and its red glowing eyes look manic. And its Pokedex entries only back that claim up. The more intimidating the opponent, the more Lycanroc's blood boils, and it will attack with no regard for its own safety. As long as it finishes off its opponent, it's happy. I feel like that's one of the scariest things. When you're faced with someone who is reckless and has nothing to lose. You don't know to what lengths they're willing to go. It's also known to completely ignore orders, and they'll only listen to trainers who bring out their true power, aka someone completely insane. I had to mention Claydol too though. This thing genuinely kind of freaks me out. All of the red eyes surrounding it kind of reminds me of a biblically accurate angel. Also, this thing's just really bizarre looking. It doesn't look like it's from our world. It was made by ancient people, and one day it just started floating. I'm not one for witch hunts, but this is just straight up sorcery. And we're supposed to be okay with this? That's a demon. That's about all we know about it. And I think the less we know, the scarier this thing is. Ground type. I already had a ground type in mind. Two of them actually. Sandygast and Polosand. While not looking too scary, they have some pretty scary behavior. Sandygast was born from a pile of sand some kid left behind, and now it holds that grudge of being abandoned. It takes control of anyone who puts their hand in its mouth, and it forces them to add even more sand to its pile. The Pokedex goes out of its way to warn people, saying, if you build sand mounds when you're playing, destroy them before you go home, or they might get possessed and become Sandygast. Once it's big enough though, it becomes Polosand, and their power to curse only grew as a result. Apparently each individual sand particle in a Polosand has its own will. I was gonna do the math and see just how many sand particles it is, but I know I would have messed it up badly. So someone in the comments can do it. You guys are smarter than me. Point still stands, that's a lot of sand. Polosand eats small Pokemon and siphons away their vital essence while they're still alive, implying that it does it until they die. Buried underneath Polosand are dried up bones from its other victims, those of which it took its vitality from. It also has the nickname Beach Nightmare. How infamous do you have to be to have your own nickname? It pulls its prey down, I'm assuming like quicksand, and sucks their soul out. Thankfully, this thing hates water, so if the tide comes in, it'll save you. Even so, this thing's a menace. Also, quick little mention of Runerigus. Something's just so scary about an ancient cursed hieroglyphic. The picture is said to be cursed, and touching the shadow part of its body will show you the horrific memories behind the picture carved into it. But just what exactly happened? What does this picture depict? Maybe it has something to do with the number 49, since it needs to take at least 49 HP and damage from attacks without fainting in order for Yamask to evolve into it. In truth, we most likely will never know. Dragon types. It would be criminal if I didn't put Giratina here. That cutscene where it gets summoned in Pokemon Platinum is so perfect. There's dead silence. You start to hear distorted noises as a demonic entity rises from the shadows. The glow from its red eyes pierces right through your screen. The darkness dripping from its body only confirms that this thing is not of your world. It's a demon. It suddenly lunges at you without warning. I love it. It's also the Renegade Pokemon, so it automatically gets my approval. Though there is a Pokemon that is equally as scary, or should I say Ultra Beast. Ever had a friend who eats everything? I know I do. Right, Gaijo? He also drinks a lot of fucking water, dude. Guzzlord is constantly hungry no matter how much it eats. It can eat mountains and entire buildings. Imagine queso if you could never get full. That's what we're dealing with here. This thing is a common organism in Ultra Space, types, so I'm not sure how they survive if everything gets consumed. Maybe they start eating each other. It's like Agario. We get a glimpse of what Howley City is like once Guzzler takes over in Ultra Ruins, and it's completely barren, abandoned, and destroyed. Seeing just what this thing is capable of scares me. And again, keep in mind, this was just one. Imagine 10 of them, or hell, even 2 would be more than enough to consume this world. Dark types. Dark types are pretty ominous in general, which makes sense. It is called the evil type in Japan after all. But there's just so many good choices. It was super hard to choose. Darkrai is essentially a real sleep paralysis demon. Just take a look at this thing. It's terrifying. It's especially creepy whenever it has its long legs. It kind of reminds me of Slender Man in a weird way. It basically puts people to sleep and makes them have terrifying nightmares, which, let me tell you, makes sleeping kind of hard. It doesn't mean any harm, but it still causes it. In Unova, you can find a mysterious girl on Marvelous Bridge. However, when you approach her, she suddenly disappears. Upon further investigation, you come across a strange house, and there's a lunar wing inside. The lunar wing is used to dispel horrifying nightmares and awaken whoever it's used on. However, this girl didn't get help in time, and in turn, died as a result of being in an endless nightmare caused by Darkrai. The reason she was on Marvelous Bridge in the first place was to get the attention of Cresselia, who the wing belongs to, returning it to its owner since she was too late and couldn't be saved. It's tragic. Malamar is also pretty scary. Psychic types are known for being extremely intelligent, and so are squids. But this isn't just a psychic type, it's also a dark type. Malamar is incredibly sinister. It hypnotizes people and forces them to do whatever it wants. Gets even worse, surprisingly. Ultra Sun's entry adds on, saying that there's an endless amount of people who utilize Malamar for nefarious deeds. Make of that what you will. I think the most terrifying part of Malamar is that apparently it played a major role in certain history-changing events. Just what the hell did this thing do in the past? To make matters even worse, yes, they get worse. Anyone who falls under Malamar's control loses complete memory of what they did. This thing is just overall sick and twisted. It's also said to wrap its tentacles around its prey and finish them off with its digestive fluids. I'd assume this is a slow and painful death. Steel types. I couldn't find a lot of solid contenders for steel type. Ha 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 ha. Anyway, Celesteela is menacing. This thing is a whopping 30 feet tall, or 9.2 meters. And this is an Ultra Beast, so it looks nothing like your usual Pokemon. It's so eerie. It's been seen burning down forests using its giant arms, and the Pokedex flat out says that it's a danger here. It also says that this thing is common in Ultra Space. One of these was already bad enough. We don't need an armada of them. Fairy types. Fairy types did a great job in the cutest Pokemon of every type video, but is there any scary ones? Yes, just yes. Mimikyu itself isn't that scary. It's just sort of a beat-up cosplay. It's what's underneath that's scary. This thing tries to be loved by people by looking like Pikachu, even though it hates it for that very reason. But people who have glanced at Mimikyu's true form are overwhelmed by the shock and terror and die as a result from it. Just what is underneath there? Whatever it is, it doesn't want you to see, because if you try to, it'll grow agitated and violent. Even if the shock doesn't kill you right then and there, it'll eventually catch up to you. A trainer happened to accidentally catch a glimpse of Mimikyu without its claw after a gust of wind blew it away. Then they went home and died painfully that very same night. I think what makes it horrifying is that they go out of their way to add painfully. Was it Mimikyu who did this? Or something else? A scientist peeked under its cloth and died of a mysterious disease. Was it all just a coincidence? The few times we catch a glimpse of what Mimikyu looks like, it's nothing but a dark silhouette with these piercing glowing eyes. Maybe it's best kept a mystery. I think the most terrifying thing you could find in the Pokemon world is Mimikyu's costume on the ground, empty. Mr. Mime really shouldn't be here, but a lot of people think it's creepy. Mostly because it's really close to looking like a human. Like, seriously. This is as humanoid as you can get. Seeing this thing in real life might trigger the feeling you get from the Uncanny Valley. It's so close to being human, yet it's not. And it gets the added bonus of being a clown, which some people are already scared of. There's nothing really creepy about it in the Pokedex though. The most it'll do is slap you for disturbing its miming, if that's even a verb. And of course, we're here. The ghost typing. Arguably home to some of the scariest Pokemon, and man was there a lot of competition. It was so hard to choose. I thought Houndstone was pretty scary because I just imagine a childhood pet coming back from the dead. Yamask is creepy too. It carries a mask around that resembles its face when it was human. Spiritomb is horrifying. One bad soul was already bad enough. Now imagine 108 of them. It's like a Frederator video, plus one. I could go on, but I settled on one. When we were younger, I'm sure we've all encountered a creepy doll at some point. No matter where you were or what you were doing, you always felt like you were being watched, and you could have sworn that it was in a different position the last time you left the room. All of those fears come true with Baynet. Baynet was a plush that was thrown away, and it came to life as a result, now holding a grudge against the child that threw it away, seeking revenge for what they've done to it. It also has to permanently keep its mouth zipped, or else its curse energy escapes. Whenever it mega evolves though, some of the zippers are unzipped, resulting in that curse energy overflowing out of it. Just the thought of something you've discarded coming to life with the sole purpose of killing you is scary. Let me know some Pokemon that you'd find scary. I'd love to hear your reasons because every list is different. And let me know if this is a series that you enjoy. We already did cutest, and now we're doing scariest. So what's next? Subscribe, like the video, comment, follow my socials, join my Clash Royale clan, guys. Come on. Goodbye.